So Ratline is what is called the ship's rope, that when the ship, like a big ship docks, they have this rope that goes to the dock, and okay, I don't know the technical words, but so and when it's docked, there will be rats that lived in the ship that just run down that rope and get on shore, and there'll be rats that want to go into the ship and go up into it, and so I didn't know this, in my research. I just found this out.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Living the Next Chapter author podcast. We get to talk to great authors from around the world, hear their story, and help you connect with them as a reader, also as a fellow author. And Heidi is here, and I love Heidi's last name, by the way. Easy to remember, but Heidi Bacon, like, come on, that's like the best name ever. That's so cool. Heidi's on the show. Be talking about her journey as an author and all the amazing things happening in her life. And you're going to fall in love again with another author that's going to fill up your bookshelf. And lots to talk about. Heidi, welcome to Living the Next Chapter. Glad to have you on the show.
Thank you. I'm so pleased to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
This is great. Excellent. Heidi, tell everybody, where are you? Where do you live in this great big world of ours?
I live in Red Wing, Minnesota. And see how I said that? Minnesota.
Minnesota.
Yeah, we're just south
that.
of Minneapolis, so about an hour or so. And we're along the Mississippi River. So it's a beautiful, picturesque place. We've got 500-foot hills and a lot of strong art community here. And Red Wing shoes, Red Wing pottery, all of that is based here. So we have a lot of tourist activity. And since I've moved here 10 years ago, it's just been like I've been on vacation every day. It's just beautiful here.
Nice. Yeah. I find as a Canadian, whenever I have somebody on the show from Minnesota, I feel like we're kind of like sisters and brothers. We're kind of like really close because there's little things that people say from Minnesota that make me sounds like to me a little bit of a Canadian accent, kind of. I don't know. Right? There's something about it. All the best people are in the U.S. or in Minnesota. I just have to say that out loud. So, yeah, but it's really great. So I'm glad to have you on the show. Do you get opportunities to go on podcasts often, Heidi, as a guest to talk about your journey?
Not too often as a guest. It's just starting out for this journey for me for podcasts as a guest. I have interviewed individuals in the past when I've had my own TV, radio, podcast where I'd interview artists because I'm also an artist. So I wear different hats. So, and I've interviewed people for independent films, directed, produced, written independent films. Worked with someone who wrote a documentary about the homeless, and we interviewed everyone involved with that, including people on the streets and people who helped and all of that. So I'm familiar, and I've interviewed movie stars. So as just for the heck of it, right?
Yeah.
So
fun.
Sundance Film Festival. So I'm familiar with the interview process. I haven't been the victim or the interviewee very often, but this is
I don't get
new experience.
I don't get to do that often enough either. I like it because I think of it like being in the front seat of the car. As hosts, as interviewers, we're driving. We have our hands on the steering wheel. We're focused on what we're doing. We don't get to look out the window and kind of enjoy the ride. We're so focused. And we move over to the passenger seat. You get to play with all the buttons, window up and down, the radio. What does this do? We get to look out the window and enjoy the scenery. So sitting in the passenger seat as a guest is quite fun, actually, to let somebody else do all the work and you get all the benefits of, that kind of thing. So yeah, I like being a guest as well. It's a different perspective, I think.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah, good. And it helps you as an interviewer, I think, too, because now you know both sides.
Yes.
So,
yeah.
Yeah. What do you love about interviewing people who are famous or have fame and are doing things out there that maybe you admire? Do you ever get a little nervous talking to some of these people as an interviewer?
Of course, I do. Yeah. But as it turns out, with the interview process, a lot of times it's a conversation. And you can break the ice by asking some leading questions, and then the interviewee then can take off and talk. And for me, I like that the best because as an interviewer, because then they can just say what's on their mind, and you get some little nuggets that you maybe not would have gotten if you had just asked a straight question.
Yeah. I find that when I talk to somebody who has had media training, so they do a lot of TV interviews, they do a lot of radio interviews and stuff like that. They're trained to talk in sound bites, like short little clips type thing. And they never seem to have time to kind of let their hair down a little bit, drop their shoulders, and just talk. Because we don't, in podcasting, we don't have a time limit. Technically, we can keep going all day if we want.
Yeah.
But in radio, you got to talk in 7 seconds, 10 seconds. You'll be really quick and to the point. And, on late night TV, it's all about the next project and let's promote the thing. And, when they come on an interview, with us being interviewed on a show, we can get to some of the deeper conversations they don't get to talk about. So I always kind of say to my guests, is there anything you haven't had a chance to talk about on the show that you'd like to talk about? And they're like, yeah, I never get to talk about this part of my story. I'd love to talk about that more. And that's kind of where I like to go, to kind of honor them as a guest. But yeah, it's great.
Nice.
Have you had training for all your interview stuff you've done in the past, or did you learn on the
Honestly,
job?
I haven't had training for one thing that I've done in my life.
There you go.
No, actually, I have a training, but I'm pretty much self-taught.
Okay.
I guess I have the attitude, or maybe I just don't have that filter that you can't do something,
Mm-hmm.
So if someone has asked me to do something that I've never done before, like starting with interview, a friend of mine had a camera and they wanted to do a project with the homeless. And they said, "You're interviewing people." And I'm like, "What?" I've never done that before. And they said, "Yeah, you are. Here's a microphone. Here you go."
Let's go. There you go.
And I'm like, "Okay."
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. Okay, how does your skills interviewing people and creating conversations, does any of that translate over to your journey as an author at all?
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
Yeah.
I pulled on everything. You know how they say, write what you know about? Well, of course, my book is fiction based on fact. There's most of it fiction.
Okay.
But I did pull on a lot of my own experiences, and just a snippet here and there, so I could use that perspective when I'm writing the story. I'm a former realtor, and my lead character is a realtor. And it goes through the process of listing a home and maybe doing an estate sale, and the different things with real estate, and also some self-defense that is part of protecting yourself when you're out there as a realtor, or anytime you're out there. And right now, I past few summers I've worked for the Department of Agriculture in Minnesota, setting and checking traps for insects, for an invasive species. And so you go out by yourself in the woods. Now,
Wow.
there's all kinds of things that could happen by yourself in the woods. So I have a healthy, respect for that. And for instance, I'm on the phone with someone on speakerphone every time I have to hike where there's just nobody there, not just for maybe weird people, but animals. There could be some strange animals that you surprise and may not be healthy for you.
Yeah. That's a good option. Having that phone with you is a great connection. I like that.
It's my go-to. So anyways, so some of this self-defense and protection, thing falls into the book, so I've had some experiences with some of the people I've met through the film process that were very, very different folk and almost culty, so I've pulled on that experience and put it in the book. And family history, so I'm a genealogy buff. I love to do family history search. And that's one of my downtime, relaxing kind of things to do. But I've pulled on family stories from World War II, and my art background as an artist. I've also had antique stores and galleries. So I've assessed art for people and know how to look for those details to see if it's an original, or and do some provenance for it. So I've pulled on all those little tiny things that you wouldn't think would have anything to do with one another, and used it as to pull on for some of the different aspects of my book.
Any interesting characters when you go back through your family roots and your history
Oh,
that you're like,
definitely.
oh,
So,
that's an interesting character, somebody you like to meet or have a
yeah,
conversation with as well?
yeah, definitely. Yeah, I have
Yeah.
some relatives that were um, going back to Switzerland. I have a relative that, let's see, great, I don't know, grandpa
Yeah.
that
Okay.
came from Switzerland to the United States in the 1850s and settled near here in Wisconsin, maybe an hour south of here, across the Mississippi River is Wisconsin. So, very near Minnesota. And he went to the Civil War and was heroic. When he moved here from Switzerland, he'd been like a goat herder and making cheese. But from their family upbringing, he knew 8 languages, which, if you look at that region, it was by
Right.
Italy and,
Yeah.
Romanesh, I think that's how you say it,
Yeah.
different languages that are dying. And so anyway, his history is going to play a greater role in my sequel to the book I just wrote. But it
Okay.
was another relative that I pulled on for in my book Ratliner, who was in charge of transporting, or I don't know, maybe not in charge, but he was part of transporting all the gold and valuables they found in the Merkers mine in Germany that was spotlighted in the movie The Monuments Men.
Mm.
And so we've got his personal account of how they transported those valuables and the trucks and where they went and how that came about. And so that's part of, the inspiration for the book I just wrote. So there's another relative. I mean, there's just another
Yeah.
World War II relative from the other side of the family that is very he's going to be part of this next sequel too, and he's the namesake of that Swiss great grandfather.
Oh,
It was,
really?
yeah. So anyway, there's just a lot that I can pull on, and that's just some of it. I it's always fascinating to me to hear these stories, and we've heard them growing up,
Yeah.
but the generation like my father and his sister and that generation, they're like, he is so full of it. So these stories were, they couldn't be true. So I was researching some of it, and there's a grain of truth in some of these, stories. So anyway, I just
Yeah.
love
Yeah.
digging and finding out, and it's personal, you know.
Yeah.
That's a fine line because, especially if someone's possibly shady, like this person might have been, that you stepping on people's toes in the family, but
Right.
it's been long enough where those toes are long gone. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
It's interesting because we're like, what, 2 or 3 generations away from not knowing anything about our relatives. After a few generations, you're like, I don't know. I can trace back to a point, and then from that point backwards, I have no idea,
There's no
who
one
comes
left to
before them.
say. It
Right.
was
Yeah.
not written down. It was not
Yeah.
spoken about. Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
yeah, and then all that history, right? I have a photo. It's up in my cabin behind me in the corner, but it's a family photo. I don't know who these people are, and it's like from the 1800s, like really old, like when they had to stand still for a long time to take the
Yeah.
photo. And I have no idea who these people are, but if it wasn't for them, I wouldn't be here,
Right.
right? So, and I'm like, I just look at this picture and go, like, talk to me. Who are you people? Like, what was going on back then? How was life back then? It
Well,
was
think
hard
about it.
back then.
We have a window of about 100 to 150 years
Yeah,
where we have those documents. I mean, before that, if you could afford to have a portrait painted of you, you have a record of
yeah,
how someone looked like. But before
yeah,
photographs came about or
yeah,
drawings, you didn't know what these relatives look like. And
yeah,
now everything's so digital. Will we know in the future from, when we stopped really taking photographs? And
yeah,
do we, unless you get a painting done of you,
yeah.
how do you know in the future? How is it recorded? Will you be able to look it up? That
Right.
I think we've got a lost generation right now of not having a lot of photographs.
Right.
that won't be saved, and who everything we save on the computer in 20 years, it may not even be accessible.
Yeah.
So
Right.
it's lost.
Yeah. Is that kind of some what drives you as an author then to kind of capture history, capture stories, and then use that as like a foundation for you as a writer?
Oh, I guess I never thought of it
Yeah.
that way, but yeah, that's a good insight. Yeah, it's important to me. I mean, nobody's going to care in the future. And I just saw something this morning about, you know, don't you want to leave a legacy when you die? And it's like,
Hmm.
I'm going to be dead. I'm not going to care. And
Yeah.
um, the legacy, they're not going to know who I am personally. Who
Hmm.
cares? It's just, I think it's important, but you get a couple hundred years away from anybody that was important and they fade into the background or
Yeah.
maybe obliterated all these
Yeah.
different, it could be natural disaster. Um, for instance, anyone in Pompeii, who knows who
Yeah.
they were, they could have been very important, and
Right.
now we're digging up things and trying to piece it together like a puzzle. But, so it's not like I'm leaving a legacy of who I am, but I love to pass along a story so someone else can imagine it. As
Yeah.
a child, I read I was a bookworm. My favorite rainy day afternoon was drinking a cup of tea and just laying in bed and reading a good book.
Yeah.
So, and that's what my nickname was, bookworm. But it took me places.
Yeah.
It transports you. You can imagine a different scenario. It's a dream that you're reading.
Yeah. In our world of screens today and being so connected to the internet and TV and media and all that, books are still a nice kind of release and kind of a retreat from that to go
Yeah.
back to something a little less overstimulating,
Yeah. And
and
it
just
lets
have
your
that time.
brain
Right.
do
Yeah.
the imagination. I mean,
Hmm.
I watch a million movies. I mean, that's my go-to. I just sit and watch,
Yeah.
watch, watch a lot of things, documentaries and stuff. I just love taking it in and
Yeah.
hearing the stories and watching a story. But when you're reading, and even an audiobook, you're transported through your imagination rather than being seeing it, someone's interpretation of what was being said
Yeah.
in the book.
Yeah.
So you're using someone
Yeah.
else's imagination that you're seeing on the screen,
Yeah.
rather than being able to be free to see, create that image of that character in your brain.
Yeah. We're getting really in deep, Heidi, right off the gate. I like
Are
this.
we?
This is really good. Yeah, no, it's good. I love this. This is exactly what I wanted to do together today. Now, if you were listening to a podcast that talked about authorship before you began your journey writing, and there's two people talking, you're listening in to this conversation, what would have been helpful to hear from an author talking about writing your book and sharing your story that really would have been helpful in the early days for you to hear? Because that author's listening, and I
Yeah.
really want to talk to them for a second. What would have helped you to hear in a conversation about writing?
It's okay to just start. You don't have to have the whole story played out in your head. If you have an idea that you are interested in conveying, or in my case, it's like I imagine it. I imagine, if someone says this, what would they say? Well, I imagine, that maybe conversation or the events in my head. And so, but I don't know what's going to happen after that. So I write that down. And when I wrote Ratliner, what I did, divorced mom, kids are in bed, three kids. Um, and my downtime, I had this story that I wanted to start. And so every night I would take a notebook and a pen and sit in bed and write, until I didn't know where it was going to go the next step, or I need to do some more research, or I just wrote what was in my head that day.
Yeah.
And for me, then I was like, oh, I'm stumped. I don't know where else to go with this. I'm calling it quits tonight. And here's my notebook. It's still, ready to go for tomorrow or the next day or whatever. There's no rush. And I could be gardening or in the shower or driving, and all of a sudden I'm not focusing on it. You know what I mean? It's one of those
Yeah.
things where it just all of a sudden I'm doing something else and I get an idea of what the next step could be. And
Yeah.
like, oh, and if that's the next step, then what happens then? And so in my head, I've played it out. So when I'd go to bed that night, I would just kind of furiously write down whatever was in my head.
Yeah.
And
Right.
so then I'd get to where that was. And so basically, you don't have to worry about having a complete story before you start. You don't have
Yeah.
to worry about having the proper way to write it down. For me, I did it by hand. And then I did it in 30 days. And then after that, it took me years
Yeah.
years to transpose it to my computer. And as I did, I edited each time I went through. I edited it some more,
Yeah.
and um, I found through the process, and me, I was just doing it. Right, I didn't know the proper way you should write with the paragraphs and the spacing, and I went back and I had
Yeah.
to change everything after the period, two spaces to one space.
Yeah.
All these different things that I had grown up learning. Just in English
Yeah.
class wasn't proper when you're writing a book, and there's certain formats, there's certain typesets, there's all this stuff. It can be very overwhelming as you're starting out, saying, "Well, I've got to do it this way," but you don't. You don't. You
Yeah.
could, and actually,
Right.
there's programs that can take what you write, even if you type just, whatever you want to, and then you can say, put it in this format, and bam, it's done for you. You don't have to waste any of your creative time doing
Yeah.
those mundane kind of, you know, English grammar kind of things.
Yeah. There you go. Okay, let's talk a little about Ratliner. The name of the book, for those that are listening, they're like, is this a book about rats on a boat? Like, when I first thought, I want to make sure people listening and reading, they're like, what is this book about? I'm really curious. Can you give us the overview?
Well, the name came about in some of my research. I had a couple different working titles until I nailed one down, and I was
Yeah.
determined to find a one-word title because I just like how that looks on a book,
Yeah, that's awesome.
And so Ratline is what is called the ship's rope. That when the ship, like a big ship, docks,
Yeah.
they have this rope that goes to the dock. And okay, I don't know the technical words, but
Yeah. Yeah.
so and when it's docked, there will be rats that lived in the ship that just run down that rope and get on shore. And there'll be
Fun.
rats that want to go into the ship and go up into it, And so I didn't know this, in my research, I
Yeah.
just found this out. But at after World War II, there were some Nazi offenders that escaped to avoid prosecution,
Yeah.
and they used certain travel lines with friendly people that in different countries, to Venezuela, to Chile, to United States, to Canada, to
Yeah.
I think Africa. I mean, so all these different countries, and those lines of escape were called rat lines. And so the
Mm.
correlation of that dirty rat Nazi, he's
Yeah.
going,
Yeah.
he's escaping so he doesn't um, have to answer for their crimes.
Right.
And so
Okay.
that the story begins about a character who was an actual person during World War II. And I've used some creative license. This person died, but in my scenario, um, the assassination attempt did not work, and
Mm.
they sent him out since he was doing some things that Hitler was like, "Don't do that." So
Yeah.
so that's the base of the Ratliner, is
Okay.
referring to that person in the story that had secretly left
Okay.
and
Okay.
started a whole
And
new life with a new name, new
and so
identity.
Yeah. Okay. So, how much, if you can give a percentage, rough idea, how much is based on true story? How much is fictionalized? Like 10%, 80% real? Like, what do you kind of say?
I would say at least 80%
Okay.
fictionalized.
Yeah.
Much of what I've included in the book were based on true events,
Yeah.
true people, people who did exist, scenarios that actually could happen, so that's the gray area between the
Yeah.
fiction and the fact. But a lot of what I pulled on has to do with some organizations that I was aware of growing up and as an adult, and they're incorporated. Um, some of the items, I don't want to give away home my mobile book,
No, no, no,
so
no.
people
Yeah.
can
Yeah.
go and read it because
Yes.
it's really interesting. So um, I worked with Greg Bradshear, and let me get this right. I have this next to me so I can say
There you go.
this correctly.
Yeah.
I don't want to screw that up. He's back in the day. This was honestly 2009 is when I wrote this book. 2009. So long time ago. And I sent an inquiry to the National Archives having to do with some of the part of the story. I wanted accuracy. And so they forwarded my email to Greg Bradshaw. He's now retired, but he was the director of the Holocaust Era Assets Records Project at the National Archives and Records Administration. And I picked his brains. He gave me a bunch of information, and sent me several reports that he had written, accounts, including the Merkers mine, about the lost, stolen items
Yeah.
from those. So I've wandered now, and I forgot even
Yeah.
what you said. All the
There you
fiction and
go.
fact. Okay,
Yeah. Yeah.
so um, some of the things that are included in the book have to do with some ledgers, and these ledgers actually exist. The National Archives has a number of these ledgers. They don't have all the ledgers,
Okay.
so they were either destroyed or they're still out there.
Yeah. Okay.
So that's one a little
Interesting.
snippet of.
Okay.
So that would be, I've fictionalized a fact and
Okay.
made it, is this possible? It's possible, you know.
Yeah. Okay. So these treasures that's part of the story in your book, are we talking about a couple trinkets, a couple things, or are we talking about a lot of treasure?
A lot,
Okay.
a lot.
All right.
Yeah,
A lot. It feels like an Indiana Jones story
it
when
kind
you're
of is.
explaining it.
Right? It's a mystery adventure,
Yeah.
romance, World War II, car chase.
Yeah.
you know, you,
Because
all those
yeah.
little there's fighting, there's
Yeah.
you know, bad things that
Okay.
happen, and
Yeah.
then some things that are reflected back on concentration camps and some of those bad things as well.
Okay. Yeah, because that movie series really talks a lot about artifacts and getting them and bringing them back and restoring them and all that kind of rescuing these things. So
And people who
I'm
want
getting a
them
little taste.
don't want
Yeah, a
it to
little taste of
happen.
that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
people who don't
Right.
want, are preventing that from happening.
Right.
Yeah, and I wanted to say Greg Bradshaw, who I just referred to,
Yeah.
while I was doing this, he was also being um, the author and the movie. The Monuments Men were picking his brains as well, and I didn't know that was happening at the same time. And so when
Wow.
that came out, it's very related, to the story is related to mine in that relation, about hitting on that one area. But I feel very fortunate and thankful to have his guidance,
Yeah.
when I
Yeah.
was working with the accuracy. But
It's good.
But anyway,
Yeah, that's great. So your interview skills would have come in handy there, asking questions of him and getting direction. That's kind of nice. You could lean in on that a little.
I had some very specific things I was trying to find out about the
Yeah,
accuracy of what I was going to include in my book.
yeah.
And he was
So
able to help me there.
it's a great resource for you. My gosh. Like,
I
because
know.
again, you're talking about writing in your bed at night when the kids are in bed and you're just kind of letting the story flow. But your story has so many roots in history requiring you to do research. So you have to go read about the real story and then somehow let that influence you to write your fictional version of it. You're balancing both at the same time then.
And believe me, because it was about concentration camps and stories, some little known stories, some things that I had heard from other people who had family members that experienced these little stories, that it was so nauseating that
Right.
sometimes at night I just couldn't do it anymore. I was physically nauseous because of
Yeah.
how sick I was, because of reading about how horrible things had happened.
Right.
And so then I'd have nightmares, you know. So, um, but it was important. And I believe strongly that um, continuing to share horrible events that make you very uncomfortable is
Yeah.
important for the future, you know, just so
Right.
people remember that, you know, there's horrible things that can happen out there. You know,
Yeah.
we're pretty complacent and protected in our own cocoons where we're very safe in
Yeah.
environments for the most part. And knowing that, and I try to imagine that, and that's part of, you know, writing, I think, is putting yourself in that person, that character's shoes and or skin, and trying to see from their eyes and experience what they might have experienced. And I'm a very empathetic person, and so
Yeah.
I it's hard, you know, but again, I think, and the thing is, so many people that are being affected by that kind of thing today in the world, and have been affected in the past. You might run across them, and they're in a different place now, where they're in that safer cocoon, and you know they just like that. The next person that you see, you may not know their background. You may never know, because a lot of
Yeah.
times it's kind of like veterans. You know, it's hard after going through experience like war
Yeah.
to share anything, and you may never. You know, it may be too hard. But
Yeah.
anyway, off
Yeah.
on a tangent. But
Yeah. No, I think those stories shape us, and then they shape our family, and then they shape our legacy. And like, you're distant relatives, and they had no money. Things were tough. So what did they do? How did they survive? That shaped how they lived their life when they had plenty, when they used to have none. So then their children grew up with that point of reference. So then they treat their family different. It just carries forward and forward and forward. So I like that you go backwards and kind of deconstruct the story and understand what was happening back then, chase your roots, and see who comes up in your story. That's a very interesting approach. I like how you're bringing in your passion for history and family and story, and then using that as kind of a foundation to become an author and write stories like that. That's a unique perspective. I think that's one thing too that I think a lot of authors, when they're struggling for starting, is who's going to read my book? Like, who cares what I have to say? But you're a unique combination of everything that's ever happened to you and everything you've learned and people you've met. No one else can write this book, Heidi. Only you could have written this book based on who you are. So somebody else could write a book about rat lines, but they couldn't have written your book. You're the only one who could do this. So as an author listening, you're like, I don't know. I don't know if I'm going to be any good at this. Like you said, just start, get going on it, follow your passions, and then you might end up with a book one day and be on a podcast talking about your amazing book, right? That's kind of what I want to encourage listeners to, as they listen to this as well.
well, and also, I wrote it to get it out of me,
Yeah.
and then I had it hanging over my head like a black cloud because so many years of editing, and I had people that were avid readers review it and give me constructive criticism. And those people along the way were the building blocks, and as an artist who has worked for clients, I have had to separate myself from what I am doing and taking things personally. If someone wants something changed in the process, I don't like this as well, and just let it be a product. So I had to remove myself a bit because that's my baby and that's my soul.
Yeah.
I've
Yeah.
just put it out on paper and welcome that constructive criticism.
Yeah.
And I always have a knee jerk reaction. First of all, like, oh, it's fine, and then I open my mind a little bit and read what has been said to me, and look at that and like that's a great insight. And yeah, that's right. I need to do that, and then go
Yeah.
back and incorporate that. But it was during COVID, I think stimulus checks. I paid for a professional editor, Shelley's editing service. I don't know if I could,
Oh
do
yeah.
a
Please.
yeah. So
Plug, plug.
she's my editor, and I says I don't have a lot of money, and she says I'll help you, just we'll do it any way you want to up front, or I'll do part of it and you pay me as I go. And so that's what we did. I paid her as I went, and she did the editing. And then it got into a state where I could send it to publishers. Well, at that state also, I copyrighted it, so I sent it in and I have a copyright for my
Hmm.
book. And
Nice.
technically, as an artist or a writer, as soon as you create something, it's copyrighted. But unless
Yeah.
it's registered,
Yeah.
there's not a record of it, and there's all just legality, difference in suing someone if the difference between the two. But
Yeah.
copyrighted, had it edited, sent it out to different. I targeted the the genre that I wrote, and I targeted that kind of literary agent trying to get someone to represent me and all that.
Yeah.
And it's like someone was like, "Oh, you won't hear back from us for 6 months or so," and I never heard back from anyone. But a few years ago, one of my friends I've worked with in the filmmaking industry, she's been like the makeup artist for my films. She just posted, "I my book's getting published," and I'm like, "Ooh, so do you mind if I just ask you who that was?" And she goes, "Oh, they're looking for authors," and so this is amazing to me. I
Hmm.
submitted. They have an online thing with Hanger Publishing, like a plain hanger, and
Yeah.
oh, Hanger One Publishing.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
so I went on their website. They have a form for authors. I filled it out, and I'm like, now we wait. And I asked my friend, how long did it take? Oh, a week or two. And I'm like, that's much better than 6 months, right?
Yeah.
That was a Thursday night. Friday morning, they said, we love your book. We read it.
What?
Like, what?
What?
We want to publish you. And that was, I'm like, oh, I'm getting published, So
Yeah.
now I have a publisher because I didn't want to go the self publishing route. Um, Mostly I don't have a lot of money. And so
Yeah.
that's, gotta buy the books, I gotta, and it's
Yeah.
all on me. I didn't want to do that, all the marketing and all of that. So I'm like, yeah, I'm getting published. And so it took maybe a year, until August of last year, before we were done with, they did their own edits. They came back, and they were easy edits that I was like, oh, this is fine. It's just some minor changes. And as an artist, I wanted to be a part of the book cover,
Yeah.
part of it. And I had let them know that. But then all of a sudden, one day, I get this book cover, and I'm like, oh, I love it, much better than I could have done. And I
Nice.
made some changes about the font and the color and all of that with the title, and that's it. And the artwork themselves and that they provided was great. Now, stepping back a couple years before I got the publisher, I had the book done, edited, and a friend of mine introduced me to a friend of his who was someone who wrote a screenplay that was getting made into a movie. And he wanted to connect us. And so he wanted to read my book, and he read it, and he says, I want to write a screenplay. And again, I don't have any money to pay you. He says, I'm on a roll. I want to do it. We'll work it out. And so he wrote the screenplay. I've got a screenplay written. And after he wrote it, the screenplay that was being made into a movie, it was a short that he did. Um, it was finished and it started making the film circuits. And he was winning their film that they did not change his script. You know, as a screenwriter, you do the script and then they change it all.
Yeah.
They didn't. They
Yeah. Yeah.
loved it, and so it was winning awards. So now I've got this award-winning screenwriter um, that have already done my script for my
Oh, that's amazing.
yeah. So it's ready for a movie because I
There
wrote
you
it with
go.
a movie in mind. I love watching movies, and so
Yeah.
that's how I wrote it. So it plays out like you would watch a movie.
Interesting. Okay. I can visualize it too as you're explaining the book. I can see it. I can see it even as we talk.
Yeah.
So I can tell this will be a big hit if we get to that point. That'd be amazing.
Yeah, I've had people say, "Who do you want to play the roles?" And
There you go. There you go.
yeah,
Good. Okay. Well, if that happens, and if I say when that happens, you got to come back. We got to celebrate that. That would be
we
amazing to
definitely
have you
will.
back. Right? Okay. You did mention that you're working on more projects, right?
Yes,
My
yeah,
podcast is living the next chapter, so it's a
right.
leading question, right?
Yeah.
What are
So
you
I've got
working
a
on
sequel
now?
in the works. So
Okay.
I'm working on that,
Good.
and it just like I said, it's been like, oh, I got to do this, I got to do this, but oh, and going back to the black cloud, the whole part of Ratliner is I wrote this book and it got published. To me, that's my goal. End of goal. I've reached it. I got it published because all those years it was like it's doing nothing. It's sitting there. It's done, and you're not getting it published yet. So that was my, after it's published, you know, that's great. But the main goal for me was that it's out
Yeah.
there and it's whoop,
Yeah.
yeah, goal. But with the other ones, I've got a culinary murder mystery, episodic, um, that I've for years. I'm in creating those in my head, and
Yeah.
another type of book that combines archaeology with kind of flashback to history about 100 years, what they're digging up,
Yeah.
regarding Native American and subdivisions, and as they're excavating stuff, and the story, a love story that crosses the lines that shouldn't have been crossed back then, and
Hmm.
that doesn't bother us so much anymore. So,
Yeah.
and how things change, but that, and I've working on a portrait series on the art side of um, through a grant I received from the Minnesota State Arts Board, so I can do a series of portraits of people who have gone through a lot and overcame that. So it's like you can't tell a book by its cover. It's you don't know what's lying below people and what they've experienced. They just look like a normal Joe, like I told you the other,
Yeah.
earlier. And
Yeah.
so that's what this portrait series is based on. Um,
Wow.
and I'm wrapping up another grant thing about pollinators and Minnesota natural native plants and pollinators and incorporated through art. And that wraps up
Wow.
this, soon. So anyway, I've got grants I'm working on, and I just do a little bit here and there, and it always seems to work out with, you know, um, this can bring this much of money in. I can pay this
Yeah.
bill, and in
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
meantime, I'm working on new projects. And I had a nonprofit that I had founded for the arts. The mission was to be a catalyst for artists of all disciplines to be successful. And I did that for maybe 7 years. And now I've stepped down from that. They're going to do more of an endowment fund than what I had set up with concerts and classes and things like that.
Hmm.
So different take that they went on that I'm not on board with. So,
Yeah.
so now my
Okay.
time's open. I can
There you go.
get a sequel done.
As we talk through all this, Heidi, I can tell that you're passionate about what you do. You love telling stories. You love bringing visuals to stories too. You talk about your love for movies, We talked about that at the beginning and how that kind of played out for you as an author, writing with that perspective. I think that's enjoyable as a reader because then we can see it too as we read. When you write that way, I love when authors do that. It just sounds like there's so much on your plate, and it sounds like it's a lot to do, but it's a lot of fun for you to do. I think you're really enjoying it as well.
I am.
And that's motivation right there, right?
Yeah.
I like that. Excellent. You got to come back in the future, Heidi. We got to continue the conversation and get an update from you as you continue your journey. Where do you want to send our listeners, Heidi, so they can see what you're working on in real time, connect with you? They have a question. They're like, oh, I wish I could talk to Heidi. I love listening to her on the show, but I'd love to have a conversation. Where can we send everybody? Where do you want to go?
Well, couple places. I think the easiest place to communicate with me would be on my Facebook page for Ratliner. And you find it under Ratliner by H. Bacon. And that's the name of the group. And it's a group on Facebook. If you're not on Facebook, feel free to email me. My email is heidibacon1@gmail.com. And aside from that, probably that's the best way. I'm on Twitter and Instagram and LinkedIn and all of that under Heidi Bacon. Could be Heidi Bacon Artist. It could be. I also have a Heidi Bacon Artist Facebook page if anyone wants to visit there and see my artwork too. But
excellent.
And communicate through Messenger or so any of those. And I gave you an affiliate link to my book. And so maybe you can share that with people as well. Okay, great.
Yes.
And
sounds great.
Yeah, it's available just as a download as well. So it can, if you didn't want to pay, I think it's $15.99 for the book. I believe it's $3.99 or something like that for the download. So it's real affordable, Yeah. I haven't done an audiobook yet, but yeah. I am doing book sightings. So if anyone, I travel a lot in the Midwest, Nebraska, Missouri, Iowa, Kansas, to visit family. And so that's generally why I go there. And I've done book signings all in libraries and books and looking at more bookstores and all kinds of different places. But if you book club wants to have me visit, I'd be happy to come and talk about the book. And even for authors, there was a writing group my nonprofit had with a bunch of authors as well. And we just kind of shared stories and helped support each other because you don't have to reinvent the wheel when you're learning. You might as well share with others and help them know that, don't give up. 2009 to 2024 to get published, I don't like those numbers. No. And I would have been very discouraged early on if I knew it was going to take that long. But in movie making as well, it's, it takes years to get things done. And I want to do it now. Let's get it done. I want to see results, And so it's difficult for me. But in retrospect, it's the perfect timing. I'm just going to say it just happened in the perfect way.
Excellent. Great job, Heidi. Thank you for being on the show. I think everyone, as we see a ship now tied up at the docks, we're going to be looking at that rope pretty carefully to see if there's any rats making transit on that rope. So Ratliner, everybody, go check it out, grab a copy. As you listen to this, as well as readers, I know you're thinking of somebody else who's going to love this book from Heidi. Then get an extra copy, send it to them as well. And asking everyone, when you buy Heidi's book, leave a great review. Heidi would love to hear your thoughts about the book, what you loved about it, the story, the characters, the history, the research. Any of that stuff would be really helpful for Heidi to read from you as a reader. Leave a great review for all of our authors. They love it. It really helps to encourage them to keep writing. Again, Heidi, thank you so much. You got to come back in the future. I'm holding you to that.
Okay.
And we'll get together and have another great conversation. Okay. I love it. Thanks so much, Heidi. Thank you for being here. Hey, thank you so much again for pressing play. As you've heard, great guests on the show. And one thing you didn't hear in this conversation is what? What did you not hear? Think about it for a second. That's right. Not a single solitary commercial for a mattress or a supplement or a whatever you call it. No. Why? Because we don't want to break up the conversation with commercials. So the fact that you're still here means that you are a fan of the show, I'm assuming. So if you want to help to keep the podcast going and to make me feel really happy, all I really care about is coffee, okay? I just got to be honest. I love coffee. I'm drinking one right now. It's starting to get cold. I need to warm it up. Helping us with our Buy Me a Coffee link over at livingthenextchapter.com and also in the show notes helps kind of keep the lights on around here. Remember, I'm doing this for free. I'm paying for everything. So I would love to have a little coffee donation, even $5 kind of fills up my cup. And I would love to enjoy a coffee from you. So if you're interested, again, thank you for listening. But you can use our Buy Me a Coffee link and fill up the cup. Thanks for being here.